We are back with another amazing guest on the Scale with Pros podcast. We have here Arielle, the co-founder of Marketing 411, a multi-seven-figure marketing agency specializing helping roofing companies with their marketing. So really, excited to have you here and ready to dive in and talk marketing. On the podcast, we talk a lot about, operations and team building. And so this should be fun, showing and giving just some best practices to people around, how they can scale their business by doing marketing the right way. So without, me stealing all the thunder, share your story. Would love to hear kind of background. How the heck did you get into, starting this business and to where it is today? I would guess maybe it's not the first business. I know for me, I'm like, multiple businesses later, and then we find kind of our niche, our sweet spot. So I'd love to hear.
Yeah, thanks so much, Cody. Excited to be here. One of my favorite things is just to share through my journey what I've learned with others so that they can scale to seven figures and beyond. So this aligns perfectly with my story and what I do. And so, yes, you nailed it, right? Like a lot of people have, we tried many different businesses or ideas before we finally land the one that sticks. And that's the case for me as well. So I actually had many different businesses. I wouldn't call them complete like failures or anything like that, but they just didn't work out for many different reasons. They were really just lessons and stepping stones to get me to where I am today. Having a great business that we have now. But actually, I started off, I'll give you one of my businesses, for example. I had a music tech company. And we won all sorts of contests, got investments. I was pretty young at the time, and that company it didn't go the way we expected, and so I kind of had to leave it because it wasn't generating the revenue needed to sustain. And so that's something a lot of people face when they're trying to build businesses, is they just don't understand how to create that revenue engine. And when I thought about why that happened, I really sat and reflected, like, what could I have done differently and better, and how can I make sure this never happens to me again? Is I realized I was missing understanding the marketing component. And so that's actually what got me started in down the marketing path, because I knew if I understand marketing, that no matter what business, what industry, no matter what I start, that it will never fail, because I'll always know how to generate more business. And so there's, if you have sales, your business can run. And so that's kind of what led me down the path of marketing. And luckily, since I've learned that skill set, I've never had a business fail. And so that's what brings me here today. And now I run, obviously, the marketing agency.
So cool. So what got you into the niche that you're in? Because you were telling me it's roofing is a lot of the clients that you work with. How did that come about? Like, did you kind of test different types of businesses that you would do marketing for, and then kind of landed that those were like the best clients to work with? How did that happen? Because I'm sure a lot of people listening to, they're as a lot of business owners do, they kind of serve a bunch of people, and then they start figuring out, okay, I don't want to serve those ones. They're not so great, but these ones, like, we serve them well, and we can do great work, for them, and they're, great to work with. How did that come about?
Yeah, and that's kind of the journey of business, right? Like figuring things out as you go and understanding what your ideal like client profile is going to be. We call it ICP. But I accidentally, so I served everyone in marketing. You're right. It was like, if you had a business, I could help you with marketing, and that was not scalable.
Right.
We now specialize in the roofing space and helping contractors grow through marketing, but that happened accidentally. I actually met my business partner who was already in the roofing space and just had a really great process in the roofing space. Nothing to do with marketing, but just was training roofing companies. So she already knew the business side, and every single roofer was having trouble with marketing. It was a constant pain point. And so we partnered up. I already owned a marketing agency. We partnered up to start Marketing 411 and be able to serve the clientele she had already established and build off that. So that's kind of how I got into the niche accidentally. But I would recommend to anybody right now who's trying to scale is to focus in. Because if you focus in, you can scale faster with less stress, because you can actually create repeatable systems. So like even for real estate agents, all right, something like a totally different, like that you're a real estate agent, knowing who you want to service rather than just saying yes to everything really can help you focus in on your marketing of like maybe it's high end type real estate, you want to do luxury real estate, or maybe it's helping the first time home buyer. But understanding that will actually help you to get more of those kinds of people, and not trying to work and service everybody and creating a whole bunch of confusion in the marketplace.
Super, super helpful. And that, I think that's where a lot of people do get stuck, because I think it's like counterintuitive as far as like how people think of it when they're trying to scale, because they think like, oh, if I serve more people, then there's more opportunities to make money, but then they don't think about the like the fulfillment side and operationalizing that, of like every one of those customers has a different journey now that you have to take them through with different expectations at steps in the journey, and like scaling that becomes just a complete nightmare, and and it's like not super duplicatable. So I totally agree with you on that. So I'm curious, so as your the marketing agency grew into this multi seven figure agency, what do you think was some of like the big things that had to happen to get it past that first million a year? Like, what were some of the things that you had to learn along the way to get it past that first million? Because I think it's like only 3 or 4% of businesses in the US even get past a million a year in revenue. So what do you think it was that really made the difference?
Wow. Yeah. To hear those stats, it's just crazy to think that that is what the numbers are. But I think one of the things, the big difference is understanding how to transition from like you doing everything and being that solo person to actually building and maximizing through a team. I think a lot of us get stuck in our own way or stuck in our head. And you're so used to when you're starting a company, you could do 6 figures by yourself. But once you start getting to a million plus, you can't do it alone. Very rare,
Yeah.
right? That you can do it alone. And you need a team to help you, and you need to be able to trust and delegate to that team. And so I think that was one of the essential shifts we had, was building a team. But for me to understand and learn how to get the most out of the team and how to really be able to rely on them and not just try to do everything myself, because that's what I was so used to. That's what got me to the 6 figure, was doing everything
Yeah.
myself. But I had to transition to, okay, like we need to actually put the right people in place and be intentional with our growth.
Mm. No, makes a lot of sense. And so obviously then it comes to doing what a lot of people have a hard time doing, which is delegating. And if you've had the similar experience to me, when you delegated, people didn't always do things perfectly the way that you wanted them to from the get-go, and just perfectly executed and had no issues and just did everything that they should, right? So how did you get over delegating to team members, them making mistakes, and but continuing on? Because a lot of people, that's when they throw their hands up and they say, you know what, if you want it done right, you just have to do it yourself. I'm just gonna be smaller again and just do good work.
Yeah, that's such a great question, right? Because we'll get frustrated and we're like, you know what? Forget it. I'll just do it myself again. And really, we just created more of a problem by doing that and slipping back into that way. It's better to take the time to teach someone how to do it right and spend that like 1 or 2 times you need to work with them to get it to where you expect it to be, than just saying, oh, I'll do that because that's faster and easier. Because over time, even if it's just once a week you have to do that thing, well, once a week times a month or 52 weeks, like that adds up. That's 52 times you could have been doing something else. And so you
Mm-hmm.
cannot get stuck. There's a certain way you can train people. And I'm really passionate about not just building teams, but actually using virtual assistants as well. I think
Yep.
for a lot of people who are trying to go from 6 to 7 figures, I think one of the most essential hires you could have, especially if you're still on that limited budget, right? Because you're not at that 7 figure yet, is having a virtual assistant for yourself, to get all these little things you do every day off your plate. And guess what? That virtual assistant is going to have to learn your ways. And so when you talk about them doing it the right way, I have a certain process I follow where I'll show them something. I will then have them create like a written version of what I showed them, and they have the video recording, so I make sure they retain it, and then I'll give them the project to do and I'll check it afterwards. And if they pass the check, they can keep doing more. If they don't, I'll give them my feedback. But everything's recorded so they can go back and reference step by step how I want them to do it. So I will do a recorded Zoom that they have the recording. I will then have them write a SOP on it. The reason I have them write it instead of me writing it is it tells me that they retained it. And so,
Yes.
and then also, guess what? It's taking one less thing off my plate. I'm already busy as it is as a business
Yeah.
owner, right? So you have that kind of process, and then you kind of check their work until you see they're at a place where you feel comfortable. For some people, for some tasks, it'll be very quickly. They're just going to get it, and some they need a little extra hand holding. But you will be grateful and thankful if you do it that way instead of, I did it the wrong way for so many years. Like I was just like, no, I'll just do it. It's fast. I'll just fix the problems. I'll do it. And now like I'll even be like creating a presentation and then I'm like, oh my gosh, why am I creating this presentation? My VA, she's awesome. She could do it. She knows what I like now anyways.
Yeah. No, so cool. And I love just like the simple, way of giving it to them, recording the video, having them, do the written process, and then they could take it from there. I mean, I'm a big fan of VAs as well. One of the businesses that I've owned for about 5 years is Start Virtual. So we have a virtual assistant agency, and so I'm massive fan of VAs, and I'm ours, at that company are all in the Philippines, but it's cool. It's really cool, just like how the world is opened up, especially as a lot of people being more open to people working remote and hiring talent. And, so it's like within our different companies, because, one of my main focuses is buying other home service businesses here in Arizona, is we hire, from the Philippines to do like admin and customer support. We hire from Mexico and Colombia to do sales for, our different companies, because it's like perfect English. And as you know, with virtual assistants, sometimes in the Philippines, sarcasm sometimes can go over their head. So, we do Mexico and Colombia for sales. And then we look at like South Africa for like some of the back office talent, like some of the finance roles, or, Eastern Europe for certain media talent. And so it's just cool how the world is just, there's talent everywhere. And, I almost think that, virtual assistants become a little bit taboo of like, oh, like they're unskilled labor, because that's why they're just a VA. And it's like, there is some amazingly talented people all over the world. I'm curious at your agency and the businesses that you're involved in, where have you found like the best success, sourcing, different talent, like which countries or like types of skill sets are you guys typically working with?
Cody, it's crazy because our hiring strategy almost the same exact. We have like those are our three go-to places. Actually, we're putting something out for an account manager for somebody, and I was like, target South Africa for that role, right?
Cape
We've had a
Town,
lot.
Johannesburg.
Yep. We're on the same page, and you know it because you're so successful with so many businesses, and the fact that you have that VA side of things is because you knew it helps all your other businesses, and it's just essential. I've worked with many different places. I don't limit myself to like one specific place because I go based off talent now, but
Yep.
I do like to create hubs. So it is nice to have like a lot of people in one area. So Colombia, I scale a lot there. We have quite a few people in Bogota specifically.
Hmm.
But then I also have people from all over. I would say similar to what you said, you really, really nailed it with where to hire. That's important. Certain areas have like are better for different roles. It's like India, right? We all know development. If you're looking for like
Yeah,
computer science,
technical. Yeah.
yep, India is where to go. And then, if you're looking for somebody who's gets our culture a little bit. It's bilingual. Like Colombia is a great spot. Colombia has very diverse talent. Our main spots. I'm trying to think where we have Philippines, we have Colombia. I have someone really great in Hungary, which I've never
Mm,
hired from there before. She's amazing. So it
yeah.
just all over.
So cool. Yeah, we have what does the role in Hungary do for you guys? Is that kind of like back office or like web or anything like that?
Yeah, so she helps with marketing operations.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, we have a guy in Macedonia that does like web dev work for us.
Very cool. This is the hack. You guys, if you're listening to this right now, like the reason we're geeking out on this is because this is really like the hack towards business growth. Like, first of all, if you're at six figures, just having that assistant. But also, I think as you scale, it helps keep the profit margins healthy by
Yes.
having people overseas, and you actually get more production. I don't know if you've seen this, Cody, if you've noticed this, but I can tell you from having I have an office here, a 5,000 square foot office. We have people in house too, and I'm
Yep.
telling you, no offense to any of my people here, I love them. My overseas people show up more, they call out less, they work
Yeah.
harder, like they're
Yeah.
grateful for the opportunity. They're not just calling off for any silly reason. They take their job
Yeah.
seriously, and I respect that work ethic.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's I don't know if it's the and sorry for all the US people, but it's like there's a lot of entitlement in US culture, and like it's like here it's like, oh, you stubbed your toe so you need to take the day off is like a thing. But meanwhile in the Philippines, team members like the downstairs of my house is flooding from a typhoon, but I'm still clocked in and ready to work today. And it's like, it's just there's just a difference in the commitment
Yeah.
to the roles there. And it is super interesting, and I'm a big fan of it as well. And I think too, for people that maybe haven't hired virtual talent, I don't want people to think that, it's like, oh, we're going and taking advantage and just paying super low wages to people. We're paying market rate wages in these other countries, and giving opportunities where it's like they could work from home. They get to earn, the same rate or better in their local market, but just working remotely, for US based companies. And so, the and the other part, to the point where, keeping profits strong is, as a business is growing, like a lot of the times what kind of holds businesses back is the margins are low. They can't afford to invest in growth or more marketing to keep scaling up the business. And, that when you can have those reduced costs, it can really make a big difference. So like what we've found that's worked well for us is we'll have like our main leadership roles here in the US, and then like their whole team is like somewhere else for, it's like our cleaning company. It's like we have our, well, actually now we have our sales manager out of the country now too, but like our kind of my partner in the cleaning company we own, he oversees our sales manager that's in another country, and then the sales team that's all in another country. And, but like the high level leadership roles we'll have in the US, and, then their teams are built elsewhere.
That is awesome. What a cool setup. And yes, someone said something to me, and it really stuck because like I talk to my people in the Philippines. I'm transparent with them, like, hey, what's
Yeah.
going on here? Like when I was first learning and understanding VAs, really the market, I think it was a few years ago when I was having a conversation, like they told me the $5 an hour, for example, and I'm not even looking to be like cheap about it, but the
Yeah.
$5 an hour you pay them was more than they made like in a single day working a government job in the Philippines.
Yeah. It's crazy. Like in that sense, people just compare it in US dollars. So they're like, "Oh, they're getting paid nothing." It's like, "Well, yeah, it seems like nothing if you compare it to in the US for what things cost here. It's very different in these other places." So that's super cool though. So why do you guys have an office? I'm just curious with like the teams all being remote, but then you have team in house. Like, what decisions do you guys make to have certain team members in house versus out of country or out of state?
Great question. So, we have, like you mentioned, again, we're very aligned, which is crazy. I didn't even realize that before this.
Yeah.
Is a lot of our leadership is right here in the office where we
Okay.
really
Yeah.
powerhouse together. But also, we have a training facility. So we have a 100-person classroom training facility in our
Mm.
office where contractors, roofers come from all over the country and actually learn from us in our 3-day workshops where we have like roofing
Ah,
SOPs and systems. And so that was a big part. Events were a big part of our business strategy,
makes
on
sense.
like the consulting and teaching side. So that's why we have the physical in-person office. And that was just a big part of what we were looking to do. But now as we grow, we're still keeping the learning center, but I'm continuing to scale in the same strategy, having certain leadership here, and then starting to work with people from other places as well.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So you have a lot of the in-person stuff for the events. So that makes perfect sense. We actually, I bought an office 4 years ago, and we used it for about 3 years and maybe 3.5 years, and then we just ended up leasing it out at the beginning of this year because we're like everyone was just so spread out, and we're like, why are we paying for this? And we didn't do any in-person event stuff, so it was just like team there. And I've kind of shifted my model where I know we haven't talked about it too much, but basically it's like I have my company Scale with Pros, which is operational consulting. We just do operational consulting work, and through that is also kind of my umbrella entity where I buy different home service companies, and that same team helps serve the companies that I'm buying. And so, that leadership team is, here in Arizona that helps me serve those. And, we're just like, we'll just lease out the space, and now we're like fully remote. And now it's making me, what we are still doing though is hiring other leadership roles in Arizona. So then when we do quarterly planning or annual planning, we can, easily get together and not be, all spread out all over the place. But yeah, I, I go back and forth because sometimes I miss the office, but I also really enjoy, I'm an introvert by nature. So I can really vibe out at home by myself and do work at home by myself. And so, but I do miss the collaboration sometimes of in office where you could just we have a whiteboard in like every room where it's just like idea, and that part I do miss.
Definitely. Well, I suggest, for people who are also going through something similar to you or just like trying to figure out how to grow like without having an office is really like having that meeting cadence with the team. So like all of our virtual team, they're virtual, but they feel like they're here. So we do like different contests with everybody. We do a quick Zoom every morning with different topics. Like we have a set kind of cadence and it really brings them in and make sure we're all synergizing at least like once per day for a few minutes, getting together, talking about company-wide announcements. We did like a running contest or a steps contest where everyone downloaded the app and tracked their steps, and whoever got first, second, third got like cash prizes. And anyone in the world can do those things. So there's a way to kind of
Yeah.
keep people together and keep that kind of like collaborative culture. And then I've been seeing a lot of people, because many people don't have offices anymore. It's like a lot of people are steering away from that. Is I've seen
Hmm.
they take that, the office expense, right? It could be
Yeah,
very
a
hefty
lot.
expense, especially when you have a smaller business and you're trying to grow past the million. But instead of spending money on the office, they're just doing like company wide retreats where it's actually cheaper to fly everyone to somewhere in South America, all get together for a weekend or whatever it is and do collaborative events that way. And I've seen that be really successful too.
I love that. Yeah, it's I think one of the not a positive event, but COVID, one of the positives I guess that came out of it was like all of that becoming just more normalized and actually okay, and companies realizing people can actually work from home and they don't need to be babysat in an office. And there is I know some people, they like aggressively disagree of like, oh, like if they're not in office, you're not going to be as productive, and it's like, I don't know. I think there's different sides to that, for sure. But so I guess so with your business, like what's the end goal for you guys? Are you planning to grow the agency, eventually sell it, or is it, what are kind of some of the things that you guys are working towards?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So, when growing a business, and I'm speaking a little general because I want people to understand the mentality, because you could apply it to any business. Mine's
Yeah.
just a marketing agency, but you buy
Yeah.
many businesses, right? And you have that's why you're able to apply it across the board. Is we're having fun building things right now. Like, we
Yeah.
just hired a sales manager and we're doing a bulk, like we're hiring masses of sales reps right now to like really scale the sales side of things. So we're having fun with that project. So
Yeah.
that's like our next kind of goal within the company, is just building out that team. But when you build a company, you kind of, and scaling, you always want to build it to be sellable, even if you don't plan on selling it. So I have a sales checklist. Like someone who does acquisitions in our space gave me their checklist and said, hey, when I buy and sell companies, this is the things I look for. These are the profit margins I need you, like, I want agencies to have. And I always kind of try to abide by that and look as we're growing, are we hitting those certain metrics? Even if I don't have an intention to sell right now, you never know 3, 5, 10 years from now. But right now, so I'm setting it up to sell if I wanted to, but I
Yeah.
have no intention of selling, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. I'm really having fun growing it. And when you have a good business, sometimes you think selling is like the best way, but actually when you're getting a great salary and the business runs without you, you know,
Yep.
sometimes you don't want to give that up as well. So there's different ways to look at things. And so right now we're just having really a lot of fun growing it. Our next benchmark is the 10 million mark. So that's where I'm really trying to head right now. And, we'll see from there, right? There'll be different goals as we go.
Yeah. No, super cool. Yeah, I was always curious what people's kind of targets are. Everyone has a different philosophy on, how they want to build their business up, but I couldn't agree more on, building your business to sell, even if you don't sell, because I think it's also, it forces you to build the business in the right way, where you're setting up the teams correctly, you're implementing the right processes and procedures, you're making the business less owner dependent, where it's, doesn't die if you go on vacation for a week or a month, it's, things could still operate, and so I definitely resonate with that. And, within the stuff that I'm doing, like the Skill with Pros, I don't think I'll ever sell this business, mainly just because it's like, that's like my umbrella of the, what I'm using that team and myself to, work on these companies that we buy and grow and then sell those, is kind of like our product. But super interesting. So, obviously getting to, seven figures and beyond, you know, what are obviously it's like building the team. We talked about the delegation piece. what are the things, like, let's just talk about maybe like home service. Like, I know some broad strokes. What are some of the things that home service business owners could be doing better with their marketing when they're trying to go from six to seven figures? Like, what are maybe some of the mistakes that they're making that you see commonly come up, or, versus the ones that end up doing well from a marketing standpoint?
Yeah, so there's some common things I see all the time that I think that's exactly like most people who are in home service will have one of these three things, okay? They will not know their numbers. Okay, knowing your numbers is so important. And by numbers, I'm not even just talking about the financial numbers. That's another conversation.
Yeah.
That's one part. But like actually knowing your lead number, your booked appointment numbers, your conversion rates, like knowing those numbers are so important as a business owner. And I think a lot
Mhm.
of people don't take the time or don't know how to do it. And so they're missing this key component because they don't know how to grow because they don't know their numbers. You can't grow what you don't know. So that's one
Mhm.
thing I would say across home services I see, which leads me to my second one, tracking. Tracking is
Mhm.
very important. A lot of times you'll ask people like, "Oh, how many leads are you getting?" And they're like, "It's like, oh, I think this." Like they can't say with certainty, and they don't know from where. So saying you got
Yeah.
a lead from Google, there's many places on Google you can get a lead from. Which specific part of Google did you get that lead from? Was it from the Google Business Profile? Was it from a local service ad? Like understanding that could really help, and you need tracking to do that. So that would be another thing that I would say that just across the board people are missing. And then so we did data, we did tracking, and I think just understanding. When you understand those two things, you could start to put into place like an action plan of where you need to focus. So something I like for people to know that we've been trying to calculate more and more is your customer acquisition cost and your lifetime value. So that's very important. So you understand how much you need to put in and what you get out. So it kind of tells
Mhm.
you that metric alone will tell you your growth plan.
Yep.
And then the third thing's actually, and this is across the board, I will tell you, the people who dial this in have the best success, they have the best conversion rates, and they have more revenue is the actual like answer the phone strategy, like not missing calls, having a follow-up process in place where you're getting back to people instantly. That's something that's missed across the board. A lot of people think they have it under control, they don't. And there's so many options. The VA option's one, AI is another, but no matter what, I could tell you from all the campaigns we ran across the country, the ones that perform the best and have the highest ROI are the ones that have that intake process dialed in.
Absolutely agree on that. And it's crazy because I mean, that's like the dilemma in home services in general. Is like no one answers the phone, and they don't answer the phone, or if they do, it's like hours later, or maybe even the next day or days later, they're getting back to people, and so I definitely agree. And those knowing those. So what are some of those specific KPIs that you say is like, hey, like these are at least the baseline ones? Because what I look at least is like, okay, do we know from which source, cost per lead, of those leads that came in, which of those, actually got booked for appointments, cost per, booked. Like for us, we track like cost per booked clean and like the customer acquisition cost of that, and then the lifetime value of those customers. Like, what are some of the other metrics that you like to tell people that they should be keeping track of from the marketing standpoint?
Yeah, so I actually was just pulling it up because I actually have some of this like written down where we train roofing companies specifically. This is why it helps to know your market.
Yeah.
But this could like be a home service and contractors is
Yeah.
like knowing like, okay, from leads, you're obviously going to have a natural amount of those that are not qualified. That's
Yep.
normal. No one should freak out about that.
Yeah.
But there's a percent that should be qualified. And then from there, there's a percent that should be booked. And then
Hmm.
from there, you have your quote sent, your deals won. But something very big that we look at, I mean, the CAC, so the customer acquisition cost and lifetime value are numbers we look at, but knowing the ratios through each one of those funnels. So we actually have like this conversion benchmarks chart, and it tells you if you're below average, average, or above average compared to like roofing companies across the nation.
Yep.
And so like each of those have their own numbers. And so just to give you like an example, with deals one, obviously you should be closing like 30% is like the low of what you should be closing. If you have a salesperson who's not closing 30, something needs to be changed, worked on, or
And
whatever.
and so just for the business owner listening, 30% of all leads should close, or 30% of appointments that they sit or quote should close.
Yeah, appointments that they take. Yep, not
Okay.
just the general leads. So there's actually the process is a lead comes in. 100%
Yep.
of the leads that come in, a percent of them are qualified. In this case, I would say like 80% of those leads should be qualified. And then from there, you go into like the booked appointment, which the average booked appointment is between 30 to 50% for a lot of companies. So if you're above that, you're doing pretty well if you have 50% booking rate or higher. And then of that, you obviously have the, quote sent from those appointments, and then it funnels into the deals one, which we said at the minimum, at the lowest should be 30%. If you're an owner closing, you're always going to close higher.
Yep. And I think for the business owners listening, that's okay. 80% done by someone else is 100% freaking awesome. It doesn't have to be you. It can be others, even though they won't close as high. Like I have, partners in different businesses, and they'll get frustrated. Sometimes they're like, I know I would have closed that one. It's like, yeah, but also you got to be doing something else instead of doing a sales call. So that's okay. As long as the numbers for the business still work, that's fine. So what do you track in lifetime value for roofing? Because it's like, all right, we got this roof. You would hope they don't need the roof now for 20, 30, 50 years, depending on which type of, shingle versus metal versus whatever. What do you track on like lifetime value? Because it's like, aren't they like, are there other things that they're, ending up spending money on after the initial roof?
You see, yeah, so it depends on the roofing company and what their services are. So as you know, a lot of roofing companies, like there's residential, there's commercial, those
Yeah.
two types of, if you know when you know the industry, that's why we specialize in something, like
Yeah.
there's differences between those two types of roofs. And then also there's like secondary services. So a lot of roofing companies will offer things like gutters or other exterior
Uh,
work or attic. So there are upsells you can do that can add to the lifetime value. And then
got it.
not to mention like the referrals and things like that. But really, what we're looking at is different roofs could be different sizes and result in different amounts. So the lifetime value is very easy to figure out because all you have to do is take the total revenue for that month, quarter, year, whatever you're measuring, divided by how many clients you had, and that will give you what the average, basically ticket is, and you can kind of see from there.
That makes sense. And do you tell clients that they should be targeting, because this obviously could go across any business, like should they be targeting for a certain uh like gross profit on that lifetime value or any numbers like that, or like they should be, are there certain benchmarks that you typically are telling clients they should be shooting for when it comes to lifetime value from all of those customers that did buy? Obviously, I know it could depend, like commercial versus residential. Commercial could be monster tickets because these massive roofs versus residential, maybe smaller tickets.
Yeah, so the one thing I really do tell, because there's so many variables and each company is like a little bit different in certain ways
Yeah.
on what they offer. But I like to have like a 1 to 3 ratio on CAC to LTV. So like
Hmm.
no, so whatever your customer acquisition cost is, like making sure whatever you're putting in that you're getting, out at the minimum. So like a 1 to 3 ratio there. I would say that's something very consistent that I kind of talk about with people and show. But it
And
really
is that
depends
three to
on.
one on like revenue or like gross profit to customer acquisition cost?
So the customer acquisition cost it's the customer acquisition cost on the lifetime value.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily on the profit. It's just more like on what the value is. Like, so if I know it cost me like
Okay.
$1,000 to actually acquire that customer, which is not just the cost of marketing, but it's cost of the sales team also going out
Yep.
and selling that customer, right?
Yep.
Like, what am I all in at there? And then like, what does that produce for me? And then the profit's kind of a different thing. That's where you get into the financial side of like looking through the business
Yeah.
and seeing what the
Are they
profit
pricing it
margins are.
right? Or they're not pricing it right? And all that starts to fall into that too.
Oh yeah, there's a whole umbrella there. For our agency, I could tell you, we like to always strive and keep a 30% profit margin.
Got it. Yeah. No, it makes sense. One of the, and I'm curious how you would look at this. So, this is a learning moment for me. So we have this residential cleaning company, right? And, the, we track lifetime value because they've been around for 7 years. I just bought last summer. So we track lifetime value like over like the entirety of ad spend and over those years, but then we're also tracking like the last 12 months of like clients that got at least two services or more, like what those lifetime values are from the ad spend. I'm curious, would you be tracking something different from like lifetime value? Because ours are like, recurring cleans. So and we kind of take out the ones that just got a one-time clean because a lot of those people, they they just got their, house cleaned after they moved out of state, and it's like they're not going to be a recurring customer. So we kind of, because those kind of are skewing the data. So I'm just
Yeah.
curious what your thoughts would be on that.
You're the pro at this, but I would say like because we do like so our clients with roofing, yes, they have roofing maintenance packages, which but with cleaning, there's a reoccurring part to it. With
Hmm.
marketing, there's a reoccurring part to it. So
Yep.
we're looking at like the retention rate. And
Hmm.
so that's number one, or like how many cleans in your case, I guess. For
Yep.
me, just looking at it, I would want to know the reoccurring. Like I would want to know the lifetime value of like what the average, like if someone comes through and they get an average of like 4 cleans per year, or if it's a monthly, I don't know with that
Hmm.
business. But like I would want to know that how many cleans the average person, the average business or person comes in and gets from us, and then how
Hmm.
we can increase that average, right? Maybe it's like
Yeah.
actually more not like there's new business units you're marketing to, but then maybe it's more so like some sort of nurturing system that's getting people to go from 4 cleans a year on average to 8, or
Yeah.
just seeing because that bump right there can
Yeah. It's
increase
massive.
revenue. And then also like looking at the referral, like how many of those people referred somebody, or is there an incentive to refer somebody so that that like original $100 customer acquisition cost or $1,000, whatever it is for a cleaning business, like we maximize it as much as possible. But I would look at the reoccurring. I wouldn't count off the one time entirely because it still made me revenue, but I would say,
Hmm.
okay, how many times? I think you said you're doing that though. How many are one time versus multiple, and what's the average of the multiples?
Yeah, yeah. What we're seeing is, from because we're tracking just like kind of trailing 12. We have like two metrics where we track like over the entire existence of the company, but then we're like trailing 12 months to see trend of it like getting better or not getting better. Is we see, our average customer acquisition cost is about $200 to get a cleaning customer. And then on average, if they get more than one clean, they on average get 6.5 cleans. I know, perfect number on that is like 6.5
We
cleans, and
gotta
they
get it to
spend about.
7.
Yeah, I'm like, we're trying to get to 7. We're actually just started a loyalty program after they get their 7th clean, so we're trying to get increase that for sure. So no, that's interesting because yeah, we acquire them for about $200 as our acquisition cost, and then they on average, if they get more than one, they get 6.5, and then revenue collected over that time is typically about $1,650 over those services, and we're just trying to slowly creep those numbers up more and more.
Is it residential cleaning, it sounds
Yeah,
like?
all
Or
residential
okay,
cleans.
that's
Yeah, no
yeah.
commercial, no Airbnb, just one specific residential house cleaning.
Very cool. Okay, gotcha. Oh
No,
yeah.
I always love just hearing like thoughts on what other people are tracking and different numbers on that. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I think a lot of people focus so much on getting new business in, which is so important that they forget to like, how can we maximize the existing business? How can we get more referrals from that? And like,
mhm,
so a lot of people are so focused on the new, but you got to also nurture the existing and see what you could do to squeeze the most lifetime value out of them and just create that loyalty where they're referring their friends and family, and that will just amplify everything you're doing on the front end. And it sounds like you're doing that because you're a pro at this. I already know that from, speaking with you and seeing everything you've built online. But it's really cool. Once you know these numbers, like, and you start to understand how things work and how to look at things, you have this predictable system where you could go and buy businesses and
yep,
apply that same approach and be successful.
yeah, and an interesting thing, for people listening is like the numbers don't have to be intimidating, and like business can be predictable when you run it off of data. Our like recurring themes at our companies is data over drama. When someone's like, I'm making a gut decision, it means that our acronym is gave up thinking. You gave up thinking to make a gut decision, so we're not going to do that. We're going to look at the data. The data will tell us what actually is true, and the data will tell the story, and then based on the story the data tells us, that will determine the future decisions that we make, because that is the truth. And that's I'm a very big data guy on that, because that's the only way that I confidently make decisions. I have anxiety if we're like trying to make decisions of like, I feel like we should do this. It's like, I don't know. Like we gotta look at the numbers.
Yeah, yeah. I've never heard that before, that expression, but I love it. And it's so true. That's actually one of the lessons to go from 6 to 7 figures is changing that. A lot of people operating under that 1 million mark. I know because I was one of them, guilty, right? Like
Yeah,
it
same,
was
same.
exactly that.
Yeah, yeah.
So something we've implemented, I'll just share with everyone, and maybe you do something similar because we're really like vibing on the same kind of
Yeah.
trends here. But is like the profit first model, but switching our bank where I have everything already divided. So every single dollar that comes into our business already, I have percents. Like if we want 30% on operating, 10% on profits or whatever the numbers are. I'm making these things up, but cost of goods doesn't want to exceed 30%. I every dollar that comes into the business is automatically split by those percents into those bank accounts. So I
Hmm.
actually know I'm not like, oh, I guess we could afford to hire another person, or I guess we could spend more on marketing. I actually have a marketing budget that has it's 10% allocation, where 10% of every dollar I make automatically goes in that bucket. So when the team's like, how much money do we have for our marketing budget, right? Like I could actually look and see like what do we have in the account that's dedicated to that, and that help. It's a simple way. If you don't know your numbers just yet, it's a simple way. Let the bank account tell you by setting up that profit first model.
Love that. Yeah, we're fans of Profit First. I remember, so this is probably 2018 was when I first implemented Profit First, and this was in the real estate business that I had at the time, wholesaling and fix and flip business. And I just remember being so frustrated. Me and my partner Pace at the time, we were just like, "Why the f are we freaking doing so many deals and we have no money?" Like we're just like, "What is going on?" And we typical business owners where it's like we had a checking and a savings account, and that was it. And so like money would come in, and like we were just like we were doing deals. And so we were just like we were like equity rich but cash poor all the time. And we are like, man, like this is super frustrating because some months we'd get we would take out a chunk based on let's both take out this amount of money, and like cool. And then the next month it's like maybe we shouldn't take anything out because we're waiting on these three flips to close. And that was it was not a good way to live. And so I highly, highly, highly recommend that too. Like Mike McCallowic's, Profit First. That was, one of the best things we ever did. And now we've kind of amended it, which I'm sure, it's kind of sounds like you've kind of changed it for like your model and like the way that it works for you. And, I think just with anything is advice and everything. It's like, take what works for you, throw the things that don't, except the data. You need to follow the data. The data will not lie. But, so we would set up like the OpEx account, the reserve account, the profit account, the tax account, all those. And that just gave so much more peace of, okay, well, the money comes in, it goes into those accounts. I've never been I've never worked really as, an employee in my adult life. My last job and kind of first job I ever had, I was a teenager and I worked at McDonald's, and that was like my last thing. And, but the thing that I do like about Profit First model is like consistent pay that you take, right? Like I do, operate better when I'm consistently paying myself. And so like we just basically set everything up of like, okay, all of our teams get paid on the 1st and 15th. So I get paid on the 1st and 15th, and our owners and partners in these companies get paid on the 1st and 15th, and the salary based on the job they do for whatever business. And, if they're not on the org chart, they just get profit distributions, no salary. And so it's like that consistency has been really nice, and just diverting the cash into those accounts. All the cash has a job to do, based on those percentages, and it just things just run so much smoother. And I don't know, for me, it just anxiety for me was significantly lower once those things were implemented.
100%. That's awesome.
That's cool though. How long ago did you guys start implementing that into your business?
So
Did you
we
have like
knew
a
that.
similar journey of that, of like frustration, and then that's what caused you to implement it?
Yeah, like we were like guessing at some points, like, oh, like there's this much in the account. Like, should we take a distribution? Should we take a profit? Like, I'm always very conservative. That's how I was
Same, same.
raised.
I'm like, yeah, we should have more in reserves. We should have more in reserves, and it's like, for what? And I'm like, just to have it. I'm like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Always save for the rainy day is what I was taught. But we had a similar, we knew the theory and the process of it, and we've always like paid ourselves. That wasn't really, obviously now at this point when you're multi seven figures, that's not really for, well, it could be the issue for some people if you're
yeah,
not, having the correct profit margins. But we finally this year actually implemented like the banking system where it automatically goes into each bucket. And so
mm,
that's a little newer for us, and I've been loving it. Like it was such a game changer
interesting. So
this
it
year.
automatically does it once the money goes in.
Yes.
Interesting. What bank is that with?
I got you. I'm gonna give you the hack right now. It's totally free. I'm not affiliated with them. So we use something called Relay Bank, and it's the official Profit First banking.
Okay,
It's
I've heard of them, but I just hadn't like mainly just because we have like a a controller in house that they just like they like split it all up. But maybe we'll have to look at that.
This does it automatically, and you have different accounts for each of those different like taxes, COGS,
Hmm.
profit. You have different accounts, and you could have different virtual or physical debit cards tied to each of those accounts too.
Super cool.
Mhm.
So you guys use their card system as well? Because we use. Have you heard of Ramp?
No, I haven't.
So we use Ramp for our like each company has like a Ramp account, and so you could have physical and digital cards. So you get subscription to death, in the world of business. And so like anytime like new subscriptions for a company, it's like we spin up a virtual card for ABC vendor, and it's like new card amount at this amount that it could be charged, and then instead of having to do a double backflip to like cancel a subscription for $12 a month on these freaking platforms, we just turn off the card. So that's kind of helpful.
Very cool. Yeah, that definitely sounds helpful because those fees get out of control.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know we're coming up on time here, but man, this is super fun. Talking. I mean, just nerding out on all things data and the money management side of business and all of that. But I guess let's do this question. If you went back to starting this business, what would be the advice you would have told yourself to have gotten to where you are now faster?
Get out of your own way and hire a VA sooner. Stop doing all the unnecessary things that you're doing every day, just draining yourself when you could focus on like the 5% that actually moves the business forward to get to your goal. And don't be scared to delegate. That would be my single most thing that I would recommend to anybody that set me back for a long time.
Oof. So good. So good. So you heard it here, guys. Get out there, delegate, get a VA, get some help so you're not freaking running around like a chicken with your head cut off doing everything yourself so that you can scale and go to that next level. So, with all that being said, where should people go and find you? Whether you want people to go check out your Instagram, website, and then we'll make sure it's in the show notes as well.
Yeah, definitely. So anyone can connect with me on social media. Any of the social medias, it's my name, Arielle, Arielle, CEO. So you can connect with me on social. You could also go to our website, marketing411.com, if you want to see more about the marketing side of things.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. And for everyone listening, we'll see you guys in the next episode.